Aloha, everybody. I'm Jeremy. I am a co-founder of the Hawaii Game Design Group, Hawaii Game Developers. We're a group that meets up bi-monthly to share tips and ideas and discuss trends and find resources to help each other complete our projects. We're a member-driven group where each individual member can sets up the agenda, and we search out resources and industry personnel to come in and provide insight, answer questions related to our agenda topics. We were a group for quite some time. We had dissolved, but we started back up since the pandemic virtually. And I'd like to introduce uh, Albert Gao. Um, Go ahead, sir.
Oh, hi. I'm Albert, and I just want to. I'm going to talk about a little bit of our history, and then a little bit about what I'm working on. Um, so there was actually another game development group in Hilo that Jeremy and Cash and I were part of. It was a physical meetup. It was pretty nice. It was in a commercial building, and we had like a room to ourselves and a big wooden table, and everybody could bring their computers and their prototypes and show it to each other and all of that. And it was really nice because you got to meet people who were passionate about what you were passionate about. Like it's hard to like show just like a random friend your pre-alpha prototype and have them understand all the little white cubes or something. And they're not going to get it. But if you talk to another game developer, they'll get it. And it's nice to have that that repertoire. I mean, that you know that communication between you guys. And it helps, like personally, it helps keep me motivated because like I had somebody to show progress to, and I don't know, for some reason that made progress feel more real. And it was nice other people's prototypes too, seeing like they're kind of where you are as um and you could kind of like cheer each other on. It kind of felt like if any of us succeeded, like all of us succeeded in some kind of way. It felt like a community, and it was really important for things like motivation. Um, but this city is only about 46,000 people, and not very many of them are game developers or interested in game development, and so turnout wasn't great. A really good day, you'd get like, but most days it'd be more like three or four, sometimes even just two people, and that was the organized. And, it's sometimes. And so in after a few years it just dissolved, and then everybody was and for me, it really hurt my motivation. Like I had to just motivate myself from then on. And sometimes it was would spend days just not even looking at my game. And then they like I knew I only had to write like 3 lines of code, and it just took me like a couple hours to build up the motivation to drag myself to the computer just to write the 3 lines of code and then save it and quit and not even play test it. No, it was yeah, but eventually I did finish. But yeah, it was I think I could have finished probably in half the time if I just had that game development group just to talk to during it. So when Jeremy one day he came up to me, and he came virtually, he said he wanted to start this up again. And I was like, yeah, I jumped right aboard, and it's been really nice again. Like we meet up bi-monthly now instead of monthly. Before it was monthly, and this is the thing I look forward to every month. That was the thing I look forward to the most, and this is the thing I look forward to the most now as well. And it's nice to finally be able to bounce ideas off of people and show people progress, and talk about things. And it's just it's I think I think for like a small community, especially if you live in a small community or isolated community, or you're just isolated in general, I think it's super important to just find someone else, like even if it's just one other person that's passionate about what you're passionate about, and that way you can talk to each other and keep each other's motivation up. And it's hard when you're if it's game development because not that many people are into it, and it makes a huge difference. And so yeah, that's the history, and then so I'll talk about a little bit about what I was working on during that time. It was a game called Hyperside, and you play as the villain, and you're trying to conquer the Earth. Um, and you do so by it's a VR game, by the way. You go in and you pick a city, and you drop your various minions into the city. Then the AI takes over, and you watch them, kill all the people, and then you collect the souls, and then you use the souls to upgrade your minions, and then make them stronger, so you can take on bigger cities with better defenses. And so leveling up their minions, for example, like there's like the parasite, which you'll see in a when I screen share. um it's like when it levels up, it gains strength, speed, health, and the infection chance goes up. But it also gains new ability, and like all the minions gain new abilities that when they get to like level 9 and 10. So like at level 9, it suddenly becomes smart, and instead of like hoarding together, they split apart and hunt their own humans, and so that makes them more resistant to like AOE attacks by like giant mechs and stuff like patrolling the city. And in that level 10, there's like a random chance that a super parasite is born, which is like better in every way, and also it has 100% chance of infecting any humans it comes across. Um, so I'll show you guys a quick trailer. It's like 30 seconds long that I built for I just put together for Steam. Um, let's see, right here. Can you guys see that?
We have to click watch stream to see it.
Okay.
I can now see it.
Is that okay, Steve?
It cannot be seen over the stream.
Okay, so I'll just
It is a diabolically addictive game of resource management and world destruction. There's your tagline, and no charge. No charge. While they're getting that stream up, I just wanted to say, too, you know what we all do here is the greatest job in the whole planet. We get to make that. People pay for it. Oh, my goodness. And if that won't motivate you every single day, I don't know what will. It's,
Well, another motivator is definitely the group. I always get motivated after the meetings that we have.
It's been able to help you make quite a bit of progress, Cash. Okay, the screen's up.
Okay.
All right, if everyone can mute while the speaker's on, that would help because I'm hearing some reflection coming back in.
this will be fast. It's only 30 seconds long. What the? Something happened. So that was the trailer I put together for Steam. It's I know like it looks like a COVID simulator now, but I promise it's not. I started this in July of last year, so I'm not sure if the perception of it after the pandemic is going to help it or hurt it. I guess we'll see. Um, so I mean, it's like all ready for release. I just have to press that release button. Um, it's I decided to wait until December 1st just because November had all the really big stuff coming out. And now I started working on my new VR project. It's going to be a VR Metroidvania. And this time I'm not going to hold myself back. Like this time, then on a hyper side, I kept, I kept the scope really, really small. And I stop myself from making the monsters too grotesque looking or too weird or scary. So this time I'm just gonna go all out and see what happens, and that this one will be something I'll be really proud of. I hope. And with that, I'll pass it to Cash.
Hello, I'm Cash Anderson, and I am one of the game devs here. And I feel like one of the most important aspects of making games and game design is to make sure that it's simple. And if you're adding complexity, make sure that there's a reason for it to be complex. Does it add new choices, very interesting choices for the players to make? Is one of the questions you should ask. I found the when I first started, I didn't I didn't really know what I was doing, and things were a little chaotic, and I was not very motivated. It took weeks for me to get anything done, and it wasn't too polished when I started with my game. And eventually, I learned of the group, the physical group, the one that sort of started the current group that I'm in, and that group was great. We had a lot of different people, not people, but a whole bunch of different content each time we met up. And that really inspired me and kept me moving, and it kept me going a little bit faster than I did when I was alone. And eventually, I think it was Jeremy, but he told me about the HawaiiCon Indie Game Jam, and I went and I tried my best to get it all polished up in time for that, and I put in the competition, and it actually won, which it was a little stressful because one competitor showed up with a laptop, and I thought it was game over because he might have brought a game, but I won it, even though there was some good competitors, and eventually that old group kind of died off, and eventually Jeremy and a few others started up, and it's been great. We've gotten to meet a lot of neat people from all over the world. It's been really a huge improvement over the last one. We have a huge turnout every meeting, like 12, 15 people sometimes. It's great. That's about it for me. Chris?
I didn't realize I'd have an active part.
Christian.
Yes, okay, that's better.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
Sorry for the confusion.
All right. So my name is Christian. I'll get over a bit on like what I did so far, and then I'll talk about like my experiences with the group and what it's done for me. So I started like around like October 2018. I was just a regular high school kid, and then all of a sudden I was like, I just wanted to make a game. So, along with that, I've also had the mindset of being like the one-man army. So I've done like practically everything like by myself. The game that I created was called Kings and Duels. It's a tactical TCG where each creature would have their own roles and you have to place them strategically in order to beat the player out. Along the game, I also created a YouTube channel of my own, where I've also shared, like, documented my experiences. I've also shared videos on the game very recently. You can find it on, if you just search up Christian AD, you'd find me there. But anyway, I was talking to a teacher of mine about it. Her name was Marsha Chose, and she introduced me to the participation in the Hawaii Jam game contest sometime around last year. So I entered, and unfortunately, I've gotten third place. I wasn't too sad about it. I realized what I had to do, so I've kept working on it and developing, documenting everything that I needed up until like I think a month or two ago, where I got invited to the Hawaii game designers group. I felt like that group was what I've needed. Like I've said earlier, I've done practically everything myself. I've been trying to find everything out, but those guys really like helped me discover new things. Just as Jeremy said, we are a think tank group. We talk about our own projects, our own journeys, and what we've been working on. We've also give advice, provide help into further developing our own projects for others to enjoy. Sometimes Jeremy would invite guest speakers, thankfully, and they play a very big role because they're very knowledgeable in their own fields. They definitely know what they're talking about, so it's like an experience that I would never forget. While being in this group, I've entered the Hawaii Con Game contest for the second time this year, and I've actually won it. So props to me on that one. I've also went into networking with a bunch of people outside the group. They've helped me with like communicating, letting me know like what I need. So I've joined another group as well as created my own group called Overcastings very recently. We For now it's just a bunch, like 3 creators, 3 close friends, just sharing their own creations and their projects, much similarly to the game designers group. Like we'd progress in our own way and we just share it, and we one day hope to become a hub for all sorts of artists and creators and help them to produce and publish their own works. That's pretty much it. If you want some contact or if you want to like check out my channel and everything, just let me know and I'll get you to it. And yeah, thank you. So
Want to point out, Christian brought up that guests come in and talk. One aspect about our group is when we make the agenda, when we put together what people are looking for, what we try to do is reach out to people in the industry, like our guest here tonight, Christopher Clark of Inner City Games, people that are knowledgeable about whatever topics that we're trying to discuss, like bring in artists or people involved in business, or generally so that's one thing I found that's been a really big help for the members. Okay, Scott Okuna. Scott?
Hey, I'm Scott from
Okay.
Swallowtail Game Studio. Let's see. I'm going to go through this kind of quick. I tend to be a more pragmatic in my game design, so we're going to approach from that avenue. The first thing is like when you are trying to work on games, the first question I usually ask is, are you trying to get your game designed, or are you trying to design games? By that I mean, do you have some game that you've had for years or from high school or whatever, and that's the only thing you want to work on, or are you just about making games? I've run into a lot of people on both sides of it, and it's fine to have your game that you want to work on, but sometimes I've noticed it's a problem when it closes off avenues or just learning. For years, a couple years ago, actually about 12 years ago, at Hilo, there was a video game design group that I was a part of. I went to the first meeting, and you had about 20 people. You had artists, you had people doing music design, you had programmers, you had writers, and you had people who just wanted to be involved. The problem is that pretty quick I figured out that everyone just wanted to work on their game. They want to work on their baby, and they weren't really interested on working on anything else. They were looking for cogs for their machine, and that's about it. So, and part of the thing that came out of it is that they didn't have the general experience on how to make a complete game. So you just had an artist, and all they could do was art, but they wanted to have other programmers make their game that they can put their art into. So you can see how that you start to run into problems with that. So since I was one of the people who had a little bit more experience overall, and I was at the time I was in the computer science department. I said, okay, we'll get you started on this one game engine called RenPy. You could go and it was relatively simple. It was like it was a scripting language. So you could write it like you're writing a screenplay with screen directions, dialogue, and so on. And it was about as complicated as using PowerPoint. And then you could just add in assets, add in backgrounds, add in character sprites, add in music, add in sound effects, and just click, and it would go through dialogue. Now so I said, I'll show you how to make this, how to use this. We can make a game. We'll do it quick. We'll learn it in about a week, and then we can go and make a game for a month, and then we can move on to our next project. We can get stuff done, and then you have a game you can hold up and say, I made this. This is finished. We did all the steps of production and down to the point of deployment. So we started doing instruction on how to use the screenplay, and you can see everyone just kind of start to zone out because, well, it's kind of like school. Yeah, and but that's what it is. If you're going to make a game, you have to learn how to actually make the game. So after a couple of weeks of that, I noticed that one day someone just came in with a PS3, pulled it up and set it up on top of the TV, and everyone just started playing video games. I said, aren't we going to work on making a video game? And they said, sometimes we just got to stop and have fun. And I didn't say anything at the time, but at the time I was thinking, we're making video games. If this isn't fun to you, then what's the point? So that's one thing I do like about this design group, that everyone is pretty self-sufficient and people are working to make a game rather than just being a place to hang out and play video games. And I've been in a couple projects like that have fallen apart in the same way. Once it comes time to actually build and do stuff, it can get really tricky.
Can I offer a little bit of insight? Yeah. Without throwing you off your game? One of the things to do, okay, is realize what you're best at. Okay, and frankly, it's funny. I'm not as good at mechanics, although I do have a rather inflated opinion of my ability to write game mechanics. I'm mostly a writer. And when you are the writer, what you want to do is when you find those friends to make games with, don't find another writer. You already have a writer that you can use. Find somebody who does layout. Find somebody who does art. Find somebody who does marketing. Find somebody who possesses talents that you do not. Because, and it's funny, I recently was in a company called Eldridge Enterprises, which was Frank Menser, Tim Kask, Jim Ward, and I, which is basically the old TSR gang that's still alive at least, and myself, we're all writers. There was nobody to do the layouts, and then we did a great job writing and editing, and then everybody said, Chris, do some layout, because you're the only one who knows how to use InDesign. Even if you're not good at it, do it anyway. It becomes, as you mentioned, it becomes very frustrating if you don't have people around you that have talents you do not. Because number one, they're going to think theirs is at least as good as yours, is not, if not better, and you have those personality clashes, I guess is the best way to put it. And second of all, there's no second line of defense when you're trying to get product out the door. And if you're going to be a game designer, what you mentioned with the I'm going to design my one game, that in the industry we call that being a one-trick pony. And there is not a designer who's successful out there that is a one-trick pony. They do not exist. That doesn't mean there aren't people who haven't had one really great game and done well with it, but they don't have game design as a career. That's just not what they do every day. Anyway, all right, I'm going to go back to mute. I wanted to let you know you're right on so many levels. You're very correct in what you're saying.
And part of doing that 1 week production of just getting something out the door to prove you can do it, I said, look, let's just make a quick kinetic novel or visual novel type thing where we're going to tell Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Everybody knows the story. We don't have to get anything special for writing. We'll pull backgrounds and sprites and music and sound effects from other games, because we're not actually going to be using it for a production game. This is just to get something done. So I said, we can go and do that. We'll get a game out. Then we can come back and loop around. People on music design can go and produce stuff for it. We can get our artists to go and come back in with and replace the placeholders with backgrounds and sprites and things like that. And then we can produce it again and then say, this is the one that we made with all of our game assets. And then after that, we can go and modify. We can try a different story. We can modify the story. We can do something next month and the next month. And we can basically just get the ball rolling and prove that we can actually make things, because there's a lot of people who simply don't. And on that note, in the game of Go, there's a saying that I really like that I find applies to game design, art, or photography, or all kinds of other things. The saying is, lose your first 100 games quickly. A lot of people get caught up when they're first learning, is like they stop, they agonize, they look at it. And what you really need to do is you just need to make moves and make mistakes. And then the other player you're playing with can come back and say, okay, this was a good, while you're playing, you say, oh, that was a good move. Or after it, they can come back and we can say, let's go back to this part and let's look at it again. The part you're trying to learn. The point, your goal is to learn. It's not to make a masterwork or to play a perfect game, because in a game like Go or chess, when you're first learning, you can't read deeply enough into the board to make really meaningful moves. So the best thing you can do is play quickly and just learn from the experience. And rather than waste everyone's time, play your 100 games quickly, so you can, while the other person is with you, you can play as many games as possible, see as many patterns as possible. So I tell people, if you're going to work on a game, just make a game, get it out, see what happens, and move on to the next game. You can always make more games. And there's no just one game and that's your life's work and you're done. No, just move on, try another game, or come back and make the corrections in your second printing or second edition. There's always room to move on. Also, along those lines, there's another saying I like that I've seen from literature: kill your darlings. People tend to get really hung up about this aspect of their game, or this character, or this mechanic, or they tend to use the same word over and over. Like one author said that they hate seeing other people use the word mournfully to describe what person said, because it's overused. But but people have it in there and they can't give it up. But you have, especially with games, sometimes you just have to move on, kill your darlings. Sometimes I've worked on a game, I really like the mechanics, I priced it out on what it would take to actually produce it. It's not feasible. It cost me too much to produce it. Whereas if I modify the mechanic, I can reduce the amount of game components, which drops, let's say, $2 off production cost, which if you have a good margin on it, that means you're dropping $4 off the sticker price. And $4 off the sticker price is probably a better way to move the product than to have a slightly better mechanic, or what you may feel is more elegant. Sometimes I have to look at it and make those choices. I got to drop them the price, or I finish the entire game production. I look at it and say, yeah, no one's ever going to buy this. I can't sell it for this thing. So I take the game and I shelve it. Maybe I can come back to it later. Maybe I can approach it again if I have economy of scale, because I'm going to print out 1,000 copies. But on the scale that I work of, like maybe printing 10 copies, it's not feasible. Doesn't work.
Scott, how many games have you completed? Like, have you actually finished creating?
Where I've done all the design work, done all the assets, written out the rules, all that kind of stuff. The only thing I haven't done is sent them out to print. I think on my laptop right now, I probably got about 15. I've got maybe 3 or 4 right now that are like sitting in, like, I printed 1 or 2, printed 1 or 2, where it's like I could print out more anytime, but I don't think I can sell it for any reasonable amount. So there's no reason for me to actually make a print run right now.
I know you did World Raid and you did that strategic board game. But
yeah, I also have a platform game. I have a dice drinking game. Let's see. I have a mecha robot combat. I have a robot combat type game, which really started as a boxing game, but then I reskinned it into a mecha combat arena type game. But right now, it's sitting with placeholder art that I bought off of online, royalty free. Basically, you get commercial use, pay one time, you can use it for as many games as you want. So I could print it out, but I don't really have any way to really sell it, and I haven't done any real promotion on it. So when it's ready to that, then I might take it to print. But for now, it's still sitting and waiting. So that's the other thing. You can always bring it out later. It's not like the game's really good to decay unless it's really topical.
Cash, you won the contest and you completed a game and you're on your second edition of it. You completed it, published it, and you've already finished a expansion. And you find that the meetings have been helping you in the process with.
It's been greatly helping me. So I did get the games done, the expansions done, and I'm working on the second edition. But alongside that, I've started a new game entirely, my first video game, and that's really exciting. And next time we meet up, I'll have something to show off then, the new game.
Scott, is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
I think that pretty well covered it. Most of the points I wanted to cover.
If I can inject for just 1 second, and I don't want to burst everyone's bubble. If you're hoping to, for instance, create a game that you're going to put on store shelves throughout the United States of America, including Hawaii and Alaska, believe it or not, the standard markup is 7 to 10 times. I don't want people to stop. Don't stop buying my games just because now you know that I mark stuff up 10 times. But believe it or not, a book that I sell for $20 costs me about $2 to print. And the reason for that is because the stores get 40% off. Distribution that sells to the stores get another 20% off. So when just to start with, you only get 40% of the cover price. And from that, you have
pretty much anytime it goes to a distributor or wholesaler or retailer, you figure between 40 to 60%, or depends on the industry. But yeah,
you got to have some to give away. You got to have some to give away as prizes. You got to have some that you can send away as free copies for a review. There's all sorts of extra costs in there. If you don't go, I'm going to say at least 7 times your cost, you're never going to make money on your game commercially. Now, that doesn't mean you can't make money personally on it, going to 3-4 cons a year, running the events, and selling them from a booth. But you won't make money selling them to stores. Anyway, that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, if you're gonna go for that kind of nationwide distribution, you're gonna need a huge market. That's why, like, musicians, a lot of times with this kind of intellectual property, most times people are making like 1 penny on the dollar, and that's just how it is with that kind of large scale distribution. If you're going direct marketing, like you're selling it yourself from your manufacturer or you're drop shipping or whatever, print on demand, you're moving more steps, so you have a little bit more. You don't have to mark it up as high, but then again, your production costs are many times higher, or you're carrying large amounts of inventory and you're taking a risk that you're going to be stuck without inventory at the end.
All right, guys. Are there any questions coming in from Twitch?
We have no
Not-
questions currently.
Okay, well, we can take questions at any time. Now we just go into our just formal discussion in the process. In the meantime, or informal, I mean. Yeah, Christian, Christian's been working on a strategic strategy card game. About to go into what, layout now?
I think so. Because right now I'm still in the networking phase where I'm trying to contact other people, gain some support. But once I feel like I've gained enough, then yeah, I can go into the layout. I've been working on other templates too to get everything prepared for production. But that's it so far.
And Albert, you're working on your second video game. You said your
Right.
second. What was it going to be about? You said you were going to go all out. Got any?
So it's gonna be a VR Metroidvania. So I don't. You guys know what a Metroidvania is, right?
I do not.
Oh, okay. So have you ever played Super Metroid?
A little bit. Very
Well,
little.
it's a traditional Metroidvania is like a 2D side-scrolling type thing, but it's like one big world. There's no levels or anything. It's like one big world, and you're like exploring it. There's certain places that are blocked off you can't get to, and then you eventually you find an upgrade or something that lets you get to that area and then progress. And it's like that. It's like exploration and being lost and stuff like that. So it's kind of like it's in that genre, but it's going to be a VR game because I don't think there are any VR Metroidvanias yet, and that's my favorite genre.
There's a good bit of shooters, but I haven't heard of a game like that in VR yet.
Yeah, and that's my favorite genre. So I always wanted to make one, even though it's kind of oversaturated. For at least for the 2D ones are oversaturated. I haven't really seen any. I mean, there was Metroid Prime, and that was like the only 3D Metroidvania I can think of.
The saturation you're speaking of, though, is like a decade or more old. I mean, yes, there were a ton of them in the 80s, but there haven't been a ton of them lately. I mean, you're talking,
Right.
there was Duke Nukem and all of that kind of stuff.
I mean, there's like Axiom Verge that came out pretty recently. I mean, like a couple years ago.
Well, we're seeing a kind of return to them with the whole retro gaming style things like Ori and the Blind Forest and things like that. We're seeing kind of return to that style of games a little bit on the.
I still think there's room for you to explore that, though, as long as you don't wait too long.
I want to go into
It's definitely
VR.
It definitely has a deadline on it.
Yeah. So I want to get started pretty fast on the VR Metroidvania, and I want it to be this time I'm gonna focus more on the graphics because like in my other game I tried it, like everything was about low polygons because I didn't know how many like of each model would be on the screen. I figured there'd be at least 100 of each thing on screen, and that's what I was aiming for to get. And I was aiming for that basically for FPS and then so I kept everything super low poly. I kind of just like fake my way through with like with like normal maps and stuff like that. This one, I since it's a Metroidvania, you know, like I can, and then there's like not like a million things on screen at once. I can just, you know, like focus on really high quality models and stuff. So I right now I'm just working on the lore. So I have like all these pages of lore written out, and generally Metroidvanias are either sci-fi or they're like gothic, like fantasy. I don't know why. That's just what they are usually. Or like now recently, there's like also like, you know, Ori and the Blind Forest and like Hollow Knight, and those are like I
Well,
don't know what.
don't forget Gauntlet. Gauntlet was perhaps the most famous of those, and it, of course, was just old swords and sorcery.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna lean more towards the sci-fi though, again, because I like that genre, and but I want to go, you know, like sci-fi, and then you know it goes a little bit into horror, you know, at some points, like not too much because I can't even do that much horror. But I'm that's what I'm good at drawing, and or not drawing, modeling. It's just gonna be hard for me to play test it myself.
Oh, that's a little funny.
Yeah, but
Well, we
Shoot me
have
a link. I volunteer. I'll play test.
yeah, we've found a lot of
Once I get my headset, I'll play test as well. I'm having
Alright.
a lot.
speaking of
Okay.
playtests, Metatopia is a good place to play test your game. Cash and Christian or anybody, they're actually doing it. They do the double exposure. One thing, we one of the things that have been the topic is trying to promote and find ways to demo our games virtually, different platforms. And the one we're in right now has a lot of opportunity. So keep that in mind, guys. And anyway,
I'm not sure if either of my games are ready for playtesters. But I'll keep that in mind.
so next week or 2 weeks in our next meeting, since you're that early, one of the topics we're going to do is going to be doing statistical analysis on your mechanics, and that little early, how far you are. You could at least check the bell curves, make sure there's nothing way out of balance. I already spoke with Chris earlier about that because him and one of his maybe is he one of your assistants or something that was talking about it in Chris?
No, I actually studied statistics in college. Now, that was longer ago than you guys want to know. All right, let's just say they sold leaded gasoline back then. Okay, that's how long ago college was. But the amazing thing is, while I didn't get much out of statistics for my econ degree, it was enormously helpful for game design. Seriously, statistics is awesome for game design. So, yes, I can give you a few basics without boring you the way my statistics class bored me. And it does help you to balance things in your game. So, for instance, I play a lot of Civ 5. Jeremy knows because he sees when he tries to get me that I'm playing Civ 5. If you play the Germans, that you always win. That game is not balanced, at least not properly, because if you get this guy, you always win. Statistics will help you to avoid that happening in your game by telling you, look, there's a bump where the Germans are. Why is that? And then you can actually boil the analysis down and find out where the bump becomes a peak on one of your bell curves and say, I've got it. It's this aspect of whatever they're doing in the game that creates the anomaly. Anyway, I know math. It's boring stuff, but it's fun when it's games. It is.
Yeah, I found that games you have to deal with some math here and there, especially with video games. You can't avoid that. It's, I would say, impossible, or nearly impossible. But I think I definitely could use some help with statistical analysis because this new version of the game has a whole bunch of new races and classes and stuff that I have not play tested, and I've even reworked a lot of the original stuff
So Cash, you made Cash made a card-based RPG that is it's meant to be light. It's you can carry the game in your back pocket, and Cash is a scout, so it's
Yeah.
pretty much like one of the ultimate campfire games. It
Yeah.
doesn't require much to have to have no. It's mostly theater of the mind, and but he's that's the game he's produced, and he's working on an expansion to it.
I'm working on the second edition. I
Our
finished.
second edition, yeah.
The basic version of the first edition had only one race and 3 classes. I wanted to keep it simple. And the expansion added a whole bunch of new races and classes. And this new one is just going to have a lot of the stuff from the expansion, but reworked, and a lot more new stuff, including a new spell system, which I'm excited about.
So, since we're getting pretty late in, leave a little bit of time in case some questions come in. Give you guys who's watching, if you're interested in joining our group, it's open for anyone. You can find us on Facebook, Hawaii Game Designers, or in Discord. We're hosted in RPGs on the Beach Discord server. Again, like we discuss topics to discuss for our next meeting. If a member or somebody that's going to attend says, "Hey, I want to learn about typography or logo design," or if I want to learn about how to launch a Kickstarter, then we all will reach out and try to find, we'll do some research and try to find somebody that can help us. And we've been pretty fortunate with, we're quite blessed with the people that have been willing to come in with their time, very generous with their time to give us tips. Chris, he's been attending quite a bit, which has been awesome. I know that the members attached to his words because he's pretty prolific game designer.
I like hanging out with talented people. I can't help it.
We've also, we've had, Jim Pinto, Post World Games, Stephen McFarland, and Heath Barnden. And, others are, they come in with and inspire the young, the game designers here that, we're small island. So the Big Island is a small island, like Albert said earlier. Hilo is a small town, and it's the biggest town on this island. With that, you go and discuss any topic you like. Chris, you're doing some conventions lately.
And it's possible that I recently had some short fiction drop that you can find on Amazon. It's backwards, it says Dragon Scales, but yeah. I have a couple of short stories in this one. Dragon Scales Tales of Concord, Volume 1. And again, by the way, if this is what you do, you get up in the morning and this is what you do. The best motivator I can give you is work with a construction crew for one summer. You will not be able to wait to get back to your computer and design games. Seriously. Those guys sweat. Those guys sweat. Anyway. I don't know. What other topics do we want to discuss? The other side of this is the other mathematical model to look at is something called decision-making matrices. Okay, so for instance, if you have one race that can have 2 different kinds of weapons, they can go for magic or they can go for blades, right? That's probably a 2-by-1 decision-making matrix because you really only have one choice of race, and then you have 2 choices down here, and whichever way you choose will affect every other decision made in the game. If you go to 3-by-2, now you have a 3-by-2 decision-making matrix. You have to look at all of those possibilities. And what that tells you is when you're doing your analysis, you better have at least 6 sets of analysis that you're running in order to get all of the right answers. Because one of the easiest problems to have is I missed a trick when I was looking at my statistics. I missed comparing these 2 aspects to it. So what you have to start by doing is deciding what size your matrix is. What's your decision-making matrix? I know, boring stuff. Once you start applying things like, yeah, it's these races though, then it becomes cool again. Don't worry, it becomes cool again.
Well, yeah, years ago I was playing Dungeons and Dragons online, and I really quickly ran across this really bad exploit. For example, if you're playing a dwarven fighter, shield-based fighter, if you loop everything into, they had a special mechanic called block, where you hold down the button, you hold up the shield, you can't attack, and in the meantime you get extra damage reduction. If you stacked everything that way, you could get up to 57 points of damage reduction at level 10, which basically means, except for crits by a boss, nothing can hurt you. And here's the other trick. They had a special shield called Shield of Bashing, which was an enchantment you put on any shield. And what it does, is whenever you shield bash, which was a special ability which let you attack with your shield without losing blocking. So normally it does like 6 points of between 1d6 points of damage, nothing special. Thing is that the shield and bashing enchantment did 1d6 of untyped damage, which means that it bypassed all forms of damage reduction and everything else. So you stand there, 57 points of damage reduction, nothing except a crit by a boss can hurt you. In the meantime, you just keep swinging and you chip them away. And I soloed every single dungeon in the game by myself. Except for one or two maps where it just wasn't possible because of magic or things like that. You just couldn't do it with just a fighter. But almost every dungeon in the game, it took me like an hour, but I did everything with one character at level 8, not even level cap. That was a really bad oversight.
I do have one question I'd like to ask everybody on the panel. Everyone, members of the group. So living here on the Big Island with all our culture and us being isolated, how has that affected your approach to designing games? Cash, you want to start with that?
Well, my games, I am planning to have a few touches from Hawaii, like musubis will be a food item that you can get, and a lot of other different things. I thought about it, but I decided it was too evil to have Koki frogs in the game.
Oh, yeah, but you had fire ants.
Oh yeah, I do have.
You had fire ants.
Got fire ants.
We have fire ants in Wisconsin. It's,
Oh yeah, are they the little ones? Oh, yeah, but you got winter to take them away. We don't. What about you, Christian?
Oh, I'm kind of just using it as like free time for me to like keep progressing.
For how living here in Hawaii with its culture and isolation from everywhere else, how has that affected your approach to game design?
Initially, I thought it was gonna be very difficult, and it still kind of is. Just because how like secluded we are, how far away we are from everybody. But luckily, in this generation, we've got technology. So I've been like forming a game plan on just like capitalizing on networks and social media to gain traction that way. I've also taken what I've experienced in the community as inspiration into my cards. So I've got a bunch of ideas listed down in a document just for that. But that's pretty much it.
I've had co-authored a couple of contracts for RPG that I've been working on, but they're Hawaiian themed, and so I've Kahuliao and a couple of my other friends have helped me make them. So I live here. I've been here a long time, but you got to make sure you get the culture correct. Representative. Yeah. What about you, Albert?
I don't think it's really affected the way I design things, but just the fact that we are kind of isolated and there's not that much to do. you know, it really helps me focus on my game. Like I just think about my games all the time instead of,
Yeah.
you know, being like invited to go to some other things. I used to live in Las Vegas, and that place is kind of like sensory overload. When over here, it's like the opposite.
I don't know. It's pretty sensory overload here. We got a lot of beaches, a lot of beauty here. You know, a lot of
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
like
it's very
the
very
landscape and
beautiful.
the ocean, the sky. Yeah, it's like, there's
This
a lot
is
of artist inspiration. That's my
yeah. This is like
primary
the good
motivation.
kind of sensory overload here.
It's my, you know, I illustrate. I've done art for several indie games. As a matter of fact, I did a lot of art for Scott, Rural Grade. And then you'll find inspiration everywhere you look around here. I see anyway. It'll just show up when you see, because the sky is always changing. You know, especially whenever the volcano is active. You know, the mixtures and you know, it's just there's so much beauty here. I just can't even start with that. It'll never end. What about you, Scott?
Well,
Obviously, you bring
I'm
culture.
really big fan of reskinning games. You come up with a game and then you just try it in a lot of different ways. You know, see what you think is going to work. And one way that I've wanted to skin the games is, you know, make something Hawaiian themed. One example I was going to try to work on was oversized tic-tac-toe game, kind of like a bar game, kind of like how you have Jenga with 2x4s. In this case, you set up a big grid. Well, you set up a big mat on the floor, kind of sectioned off into 9 little compartments, and then you take bar coasters, print up different things, and you try to get your 3 in the row that way. You miss, you just skip your turn. That way, you have a easy bar game, and you'd have either a coconut or for kind of like a lime and coconut cocktail, or you have another one that was Mai Tai for pineapple. So basically, whoever loses has to buy the other one a drink.
And with that, we have 3 minutes left of the panel. Can everyone give a quick one sentence of where we can find you online?
You can find us at Hawaii Game Designers Group on Facebook or www.rpgsonthebeach.com. That'll have the link to the Discord where we meet up, or specifically easiest, just go to Hawaii Game Designers Group on Facebook. And Cash, Ranger Games, I assume?
Well, if you want to know about the game, the card game, my Instagram for that is mooncaster_the_game. So,
Christian, do you have a link to how to find your information? Or just find you in the Facebook group?
You can find me on the Facebook group, but you could also go on my YouTube channel. Again, search up just Christian AD. You'd see a profile, like a cartoonish version of me. You see what I've got going on there. As for my own group, Overcast Thinks, you just search that up, and we're very new, and we're gonna get that up going.
Albert, was it Steam you said?
You can find Hyperside on Steam, or go to hyperside.com, or I guess YouTube me and just send me an email. I'll respond.
Scott?
Right now, all of my internet presence on games is down right now. I let it expire a couple years ago. So if you want to get in contact with me, you can probably find me on Instagram at Swallowtail Photo Studio rather than Game Studio. Swallowtail Photo Studio, because right now more of my focus is on photography.
And Chris?
Well, I'm InnerCityGamesDesigns.com and on Facebook, and Chris Clark on Facebook if you want as well. But yeah, we're a little more archaic that way. We just have the old website and then a Facebook page. So no YouTube channel yet, dude. Congrats on the YouTube channel.
And with that, we are wrapped for tonight. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you on the Metatopia Discord channel. Good night.
good night.
Bye.
Thank you.